Hi, today I'm sharing part 2 of my interview with Karen Thrussell from Remarkable. Karen and I met yesterday and we had a great chat about all things retail. It was a long chat, so I've split it over 2 podcasts. So if you haven't checked in on the first episode, maybe listen to that first. So that was Tuesday's episode, so you can get the first tips. There's so much gold in here. I hope you find it useful. Let me know your thoughts and enjoy. One thing I think that we often don't give enough thought of, it's the whole, I'm going to mark everything up 2.2 or whatever you have for your industry. I'd love your thoughts on what you can do in a retail and maximise your profits in this space.
Absolutely. So margin versus markup. Quite frankly, it's about gross margin.
Yeah.
Yes. So markup is a formula, really, that people like to have because it's easy to calculate, to say, okay, well, I'll put 2.2 on the cost. Then it's really easy, but there's some missed opportunities if you just use this formula-based way of setting up your pricing. And I do see it a lot in independents and smaller retailers because it's easy. But when we think about what are the factors around what profit we need to make and the pricing of how do we set our prices, they're very interrelated. And I'll talk about promotion and clearance as well. It's really, really important that you understand what gross margin percentage do I need to make for my business to make money. Now, without being really super boring about profit and loss,
You don't leave
and
us.
financials, and if you don't know it, whoever's doing your books or your accounts or whoever will know it. What money percentage-wise do I need to put onto my product so that we can make money? And it comes down to 3 very important things in retail, and this is the same with online. And don't think that it's different really. I have to pay my landlord for the rent of my store, and if it's not a store, it's a warehouse.
Yep.
And yes, you might have a small business where it's coming out of your garage, but if you're going to grow your business down the track, you will outgrow your garage eventually, and so you will have to find a space to pay for, and therefore usually you're going to be renting rather than owning. Very few retailers own their stores or their warehouses, so I've got to have to cover that. And I have probably got some staff, including yourself. And again,
You pay yourself.
You do pay yourself. Many small retailers constantly telling me that they're not paying themselves. I think for all that work you're doing and you're not making yourself any money, you're not covering a salary for yourself. So we've got some options there around casuals versus full-time and part-time, obviously around, a bit of variable management around the salary side, but not much in rent. There's no movement in rent.
No.
In fact, it's more likely to go up.
Yeah.
And I think the only time it went down was during COVID for some, which was so unlikely. So there's a pretty fixed cost on rent, and there's a bit of a variable, but mostly some kind of your salaries around your staff, whether it's someone picking and packing in the warehouse your orders, or whether it's someone serving in the store, or whether it's someone doing your marketing and all that. And we've got all those other costs of marketing and admin costs and things like that. So what are those costs? So therefore, what's my break even at a minimum? What do I need to produce in my sales to even at least break even, much less all that work that you're doing? You want to be making some money. So there's a point that you do need to know, what margin am I making on my product? So let's, for argument's sake, go with 60. So 60% gross profit margin, and if you don't know the formula, it's sell minus cost divided by sell. So if your glass is literally selling at $9.95 or $29.95 minus the cost, let's say it's 17, then you need to be able to calculate what's my margin. So I do hear a lot of retailers, they'll say, oh well, I just do double the cost.
Yep.
So if the glass in this instance is $5, I'll sell it for 10. But is 50% enough? And probably what we would look at is that it's not.
Yeah.
And because you haven't taken into account things such as clearance and promotion. And as we discussed before, every business has product that has to be cleared. It's a very normal part of doing business. It's not at all a sign of failure. It's just the reality that markdowns have to occur. And markdowns do get customers excited, and we need to release cash back into the business to be able to buy more. So the reality is that if you think it's 50, it's probably more like 55, 60, because you actually need what we say is some fat to be able to promote. So we've got some money up our sleeve for clearance and for promotions, so that we can comfortably move into identifying those problem items and getting rid of them. While I'm on this, I'm just going to say I'm not a huge advocate for the percentage off whole store promotion, to do 20% off the entire store, because what we see then is that the items we really wanted to move didn't move.
Yeah.
And the customers have spent their money on our best sellers
that
they did not need to have a markdown on. And so they've spent their money on the item that was going to sell anyway, when you really wanted them to buy that other item. So in terms of preserving your profit, you allocate the money, essentially. If you think about it, there's a pot of money that we keep for clearance. And that is, then we can go hard on a clearance item. So the lampshade needs to be reduced to $100, and we get rid of it.
Yeah.
And then the money's been used for that, and it's not been used on the items that did not need any kind of promotional activity whatsoever. They were selling just fine the way they were, our core items. So we really need to have a good handle on what margin we need. And then you've got a bit more flexibility, because if you are sitting on 50, but you actually need 50 to make your business be able to pay for all your other things, then you're actually not going to make money.
And I think two things that come to mind in that conversation is, one, there are some products that you are limited. They'll either have recommended retail prices on them, and they may be very popular products. They're going to bring people into your store. You've got to carry them.
Of course.
And that's just, you're not going to go and up the price and cross out the recommended prices on those. But the power of exclusive products and the power of finding products from overseas or local, or having people make things, or whatever you can do, they're the products that will always give you the opportunity to increase your margins.
Competition pricing has to be matched. There's no doubt. If you're carrying an item and your competitors are carrying the same item, you have to be matching them. So this is where, when we talk about using just markup, is where it doesn't really take that into account. If you think, what are the factors around my pricing? Competition is number one, as in these items I have to match, and also that sends a message to your customers that you are competitive. But this is not your whole store, and if it's your whole store, then you're in a bit of trouble anyway, because you're just in a price spiral if you're competitively matching everything. But the exclusivity, as Nicole said, is 100%, or that you just have different colours, or you have a different style. It might be the same brand, but it's not available perhaps in your local area. Online, of course, it's different because they can get it wherever around the world. But yeah, wherever you can try and get something different, whether it's a brand or it's a style. I won't spend a lot of time today talking about house brand or private label, but it is an opportunity for you to maintain your margin by having anything you can with your own brand on it. Automatically gives you exclusivity.
Yeah.
So it could still be the same top, essentially, but you've put your brand on it.
Yes.
And so therefore the customer can't say anything about competition, because it's not the same, because it's not the same brand.
Yeah.
And this is where you can up your margin, and maybe on your own brand or your exclusive product, you can be more like 70 or 80, which could sound ridiculous to you, but it actually gives you that pot of money that we're talking back to the clearance items. The competition is essentially a markdown.
Yep.
If I'm at $9.95 and everyone else is at $7.95, I have to be at $7.95. Yep. So now I've just dropped $2 off my profit to match the competition. And where's that come from? Because now this item's sitting at 40%.
Yep.
It's a permanent markdown, really, because it's a competition price. Therefore, other products that don't have competition have to make it up, in terms of, if you think about averaging, that it's not all products have to sit at 50. Yep. So we've got our competition that has to be low, and obviously we're hoping there's volume in that as well to be able to justify even having it. And then we've got these other items that are kind of bringing in that extra money, where the customer also doesn't really have a gauge on what the price should be anyway. So if we go back to these candles, like, who said it has to be $29.95? Why can't it be $34.95? I mean, it's just also, well, it's got this and this and this and this.
Yep.
And the customer kind of gets that it's organic and it's Australian made and all of these other things. And plus they'll tell you if they don't like the price.
And even on that, if it's a product that they can't compare, as a consumer, $29.95 versus $34.95, I'm going to go, it doesn't matter.
It's kind of
these days
kind of
it's the same. As a retailer, let's take the extra $5. And there are those price points we all know are critical to kind of keep an eye on when where you've gone too far.
You know that, like 20, 50, 100.
Yeah, but go up. If you can, go up.
Go up.
They're not competing
even
with
99
anything.
cents over 95 cents.
Yeah.
Even little tweaks,
Yeah.
little tweaks like that can help. And, look, recommended retail price, I will just say, it's recommended retail price, and your suppliers will often pre-mark your product with the pricing. You don't have to follow that. If you look at the legislation, retailer sets the sell price, supplier sets the cost price.
Yeah.
They would like you to sell it at that price because that's what it's easier and it's what everyone's doing, but there's nothing to say that you have to. And particularly if this item is not really available around much, who said you have to sell it at that price? So, they're not going to mind if you sell it under or over because it's just recommended. So, and if you've got a supplier who's making life very difficult for you because you are not, then, you have to think about really around your suppliers what you want to carry as well, because it's your store.
And I think that's also the supplier relations, I think, is so important on this conversation because, you think about Myer, when they've got 30% off their luggage, I'm guessing Myer's not taking a 30% hit on that item.
No.
They've got 30% discount or some sort of discount from the supplier of that luggage to promote it to their clients.
In fact, the supplier is paying for it.
The whole thing, right. So, and I know there were a few suppliers during my journey that had items, particularly I found it was things like glasses or, sort of homewares that they would be selling at different times discounted. But there's other times you can go to your suppliers and have those conversations. So if you've got a good relationship, and I know when we were chatting beforehand, we're talking about, cash flow versus prepayment for stock, and we'll cover that in a sec, but paying for stock, making sure you always pay your bills on time, having a relationship with a supplier where the supplier will come to you, or if you say, I want to do a promotion on this range, or I want to go thicker on this, but I need more of a margin, they'll talk to you. They're not going to if you've treated them like crap.
And they're also looking for sales. At the end of the day, they're looking for more orders, they're looking for where can they grow their business, and they do, believe it or not, have a pot of money that they can use for promotion. Because when the bigger retailers are asking them for it, they're giving it to them.
That's right. So we forget as independents, we think our buying is too low, but there's no reason that we can't be selling the message of why we want to work with them and get a discount. So don't be afraid to ask.
But even for them to approach you first when they're cutting their own range down in terms of perhaps they've got some special deals going. Now, again, this is a bit of a grey area, but you do want them to approach you with their special offers because, again, if they've got the candles that work for you, then why wouldn't you buy them at a special cost and still sell them at the same retail? Don't feel like you have to drop the price just because you got a special cost. Here's an opportunity for you to make margin, but also be very careful that you're not just buying special deals that don't really suit your store and don't really suit your ranging and your strategy, because then you can start to look a bit bitsy. But you do want to also not just be given the special offers, but actually be proactive, asking them for a special cost. Well, if I bought 50 of these and we set them up for Father's Day, then what could you do for me? So
absolutely.
There's a lot there. Payment terms is an interesting one around when do you pay for your stock first in terms of cash flow. Obviously, there's often advantages around buying all your stock at once. We talked before about, do we bring in all the stock in August, or do we bring some in August and then some in November? Obviously, from your cash flow perspective, if you can do 2 deliveries, it means you're not paying all of it up front. But there may be an advantage in terms of you're getting a discounted cost if you're buying all of it up front, and you've got to weigh that up in terms of the freight component, whether you're being charged freight or whether it's included.
There's a lot more of the freight being added now to the retailer that was incluled free in the past. I've certainly noticed as they've cut trying to find their margins as well.
Of course. Well, and they've got their minimum value, like minimum order values. This, it can come down to things such as their pack sizes. You have to order 12. Even questions like, well, can I order 10 or can I order 5? Because you, as a small retailer, don't necessarily need 12, and you might be too scared to ask.
Yeah.
But even those little things can help, because if the supplier who is needing the business also says, oh yeah, okay, I can probably help you out with that, then they're little things that help you in terms of your cash flow, having to not pay for 12 when you don't need 12. You might think these things are locked in, not always.
No.
So that can be helpful. When do you pay? I've heard of a lot of independents saying that their suppliers are asking for payment up front. Which is very interesting.
Very common in an industry, you know, and I'm sure fashion's probably the same. You know, the lead times for our industry, buying in January, paying a 30% deposit, maybe getting stock in August, but not selling it till October, and not having the ability to reorder then, because they're only ordering 2 orders.
That's right, you're not getting the sales to pay for that stock for such a long time. Whereas you look at some of the smarter retailers, honestly, they're almost selling the stock before they've even paid for it. So it's arrived and they're on 30 days settlement or 60, being able to sell it before they've literally paid for it. Now that's super smart. I'm not saying that that's always available. But again, is there an opportunity to change your payment terms? You might have just always done 7 days because you've always done 7 days. But, you know, for other retailers, it's like they don't even start unless it's 30 days, for example. But again, it's just about asking, and particularly when you're bringing new suppliers on and new ranges and they're keen for the business too. This is where there's room to negotiate. If you can't get much room on your costs because you're not buying enough, then the payment terms is the next thing of when do you have to pay for this stock, or, you know, what can we do around some promotional costs, or, you know, you just always got to be looking at how can I make more margin and when can I delay the payment. I think from the supplier's perspective, if you look at what they're looking at, they're worried that you're going to go under. And that you're not going to pay for your stock. So this is why they're wanting their cash flow early as well, and plus they've got to lock in their factories to be able to get things even made. So you can certainly understand where they're coming from, but I guess don't always have this locked mentality that this is how it is always, because this is how we've always done it, that there's often, when people are looking for business, opportunity to change.
And don't be afraid too with trade fairs, or if you're buying in advance. I know that one of the things that if we asked for deliveries, say August and November, they might go, oh, we can't do that. You're just saying to them, let's just pretend we've got 2 stores. So you're just doing 2 separate orders. All right, so it's very easy to ask them to run 2 orders as you place an order and split it if there's no margins, no benefit in you taking all that stock up front. And as you say, as some of them are saying, I want money before we send the stock out, which we found there are a few more of those around. As I said, I was really vigilant in making sure that I always paid, because I just never wanted a relationship that was soured based on money. Even with that, you were getting some who were being more difficult. The agent, the rep, the staff member may not be happy that they're doing more work, but you're the buyer.
Well, getting the order versus not getting the order. Really, you know. Oh well, sorry, I can't order anything this month then. You know, so I think you've got to push back a bit, and you know, it's your business as well, and it's looking for all these different ways that you can make some extra margin, so that you've got, if you just imagine this pot of money, to be able to clear the stuff that's not moving by having extra margin. And you know, it's quite normal when you see many retailers, they come in with their highest price at the start of the range and start of the season, and then run some promotions, go back. Often many products have multiple price points when you think about it. They might start at $99.95 and then it drops down to $75 for a week on a promotion, then it goes back up again, and then there's a 2-for-1 offer or whatever. And so you've got these various price points through the cycle before it gets to clearance, where we hope there's not much left at the clearance stage. And that's our objective. So back to what I was talking about before, what period of time do you want this stock to be in your system for? Therefore, you're kind of planning these different prices. So full price at the start, some promotions, back to full price, more promotions, back to full price, and then when are we going to start clearance? So in some retailers, I'll give you an example, they might have a 16-week cycle. So it's full price, and then at week 4 it takes a promotional price change, it goes back, another price change or promotion runs in week 8, and then they start to plan the clearance cycle. So then you see the first clearance markdown. So that might be permanent markdown from, let's say, week 10, and then they will assess the sales again. Hopefully we've moved a lot of stock at first markdown, but then it might need a second markdown in terms of clearance. But again, we're trying to minimise the amount of stock left by week 16 that's sitting at and take another 25% off the already marked down price of that's the dregs.
Yeah.
And that little bit of stock, though it's severely marked down, is only representing a very small part of your range. So having this idea of when do we want it finished, and therefore when do we start the clearance. And quite honestly, the first markdown should be your best markdown. And 30% generally gets people moving. 10% is a waste of time.
I so agree with you on this. I even see sometimes sign up for my email list for 5% discounts. Like, I always think of, was it Linda Evangelist? I'm not getting out of bed for less than $10,000 a day. I'm like,
yeah, it's not motivating.
I'm not doing anything. Even 10%, maybe I'll give you my email.
Yeah.
Give me 20% off something. Definitely 30% I will make a purchase.
Yeah.
But on that too, for small businesses who don't like to give them money discounts, this whole idea of promotions can still flow with whatever you're doing, whether it be a gift with purchase. You could have using old
Free
stock
delivery.
something that you're doing that your customers know is value above what you normally do, and it will still have the same impact for you. So you can look at all your different promotions.
For all the work that you're going to do 10% off, and by the time you promote it and remark the stock and send out an email and all of those things, you've done all this work for not much, and then you look at the sales and go, no one cared. Because if it's not selling at 99, it's not going to sell at 90 either. So, you've got to give it a hit. And so this is back to, we're not cutting everything. So 30% off is only for select items. And the smart retailers do this. They'll be like 30% off, but not the black and the white, only the red.
Yeah.
So back to that SKUs, which is the stock that really needs to go, the trend or the fashion or the seasonal, and that's the stuff you give a heavy cut, and the other stuff, no.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that whole 30% of everything. Just be very selective.
Yeah. So as you're saying, with promotions, we're talking temporary, and clearance is permanent. And you might even add to your discount on your clearance. You want that gone. It's never going to go back up again.
It's old stock. It's dead.
Yep.
So, and we're just hoping that it's only minimal amount of units left. So if we have chosen an item that has not moved and we've got a heavy investment in this stock, as soon as you identify it's not moving, like it's not because of the weather and it's not because of the visual merchandising, you've done all these things, you've changed the way it's looking, you've tried to promote it, you're getting your staff to talk about it or whatever, and it's really not moving and you've got a lot of stock, well then it's better to take an early markdown rather than just, we'll just sit on it, we'll just wait, we'll just see, and then 6 months and nothing's changed, and then you've got more stock coming in and this other item still sitting around being annoying. So an early markdown is really important.
This has been amazing. I love talking retail.
Same.
I always love chatting with you, Karen, because I always, my head's sort of spinning and thinking about ideas. Also, everyone, there's so many more expenses. Freight costs have gone up so much to get it to you, to send it out if you're doing online. Yeah. Your staff, your rent, everything is higher than it was, and that 2.2 is just not cutting it.
A lot of retailers think, I'll just be online rather than just I'll have a store. Well, it's different costs. You've got very expensive delivery, you've got packing, you've got all this other administration behind the scenes that nobody sees, and then you've not to mention all your SEO and SEM and all your other stuff that you've got to do online to make people come to your website. They're all costs.
I always worry when I see small retailers who will spend clearly 15 minutes wrapping every item that's in a box that I've ordered and put stickers on every item, and then they've got a thank you card, and then they've handwritten a card, and then they've got something else and something else. They are costs and they are significant, and customers only want to pay you $9.95 for delivery, but you've just even at basic wage, it's cost, let's say $15 to pack that item plus the delivery plus the materials. So make sure you take those things into account. And I totally agree. Online, I don't think is cheaper than for most small businesses anyway than retail.
Well, understanding the labour charge. Labour is expensive in Australia, so these are another reason why you understand your costs so that you understand your margin, because if you're not making money, pretty much I would be pretty confident in saying that you need to have a look at your margin first, your gross margin.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Nicole.
I'm sure we'll have Karen back again because, as I said, we both love chatting about retail and what's going on in the industry. If you haven't subscribed to the podcast, I'd love you to subscribe. Again, thank you so much, Karen. I'll have a link with the notes so you can get in touch with Karen, see what she's up to, your LinkedIn.
And I mean, I'm happy to, as I said before, I do small business consulting.
Of course.
My company's called Remarkable. I'm sure Nicole will add all that into. If you're interested, we can do things on Zoom whatever suits. If you just want a general chat about the state of your business or some, expand on these things we've talked about today.
And you also mentioned the other day the Retail Association does have courses as well. So don't forget them as a great course, because sometimes they have courses that are even subsidised government support.
Often.
Yeah.
Often
so
it's a great way for you to get some skills up without a huge cost to you.
Yeah, and I know I did one many years ago that was subsidised by the government, so keep an eye on that as well. So all those details will be in the podcast notes for you. Thank you again.
Thanks, Nicole.
And
everyone got something out of it.
Have a sensational day, and we'll see you soon. Take care. Bye.
Thank you.